Well, everybody, you got me for right now. Bruce is having some technical difficulties, and Greg may be here. He may not. Greg is in probably, I think, as he said yesterday, the busiest month of the year for him. So, uh, we will start things out though. I know Bruce probably will be in. He's having some, I think, bandwidth or some type of issue like that. But that's that. So just want to welcome everybody in. I know we've got a guest that's going to join in at some point also tonight. So as soon as he's done feeding his bees, he's going to jump in, and we're going to get some long or some short story long. So, and here we go. Let's see if he's got it now. 21st bees, Michael. Yeah, they did show up. Yep. So I know, Chris. Solo Castle. Bruce, we got you, buddy.
All right. Well, I moved one of the little router things down here closer, whatever those are called, and maybe that'll work.
Do you guys have a mesh network, or
it's just like one of those little
booster?
A booster, yeah, sitting about 5 feet away. So maybe.
Oh, there you go. Yep. Yeah, good deal. But everybody, welcome. I see a lot of familiar faces in here, so we are going to chat bees tonight. So Lee, hello. 21st bees. Chris, good time last night, man. I really enjoyed that. Yesterday I was down. I had a 2-hour, 50 whatever minute drive. Went down to the Fairfield County Beekeepers. Was honored. They had asked me to come on down and speak. So went down and saw a lot of people that I know. So it was a good time. And I mean, it was pretty much, I think Greg posted a picture in there. It was like standing room only. I was like kind of taken back from that. I mean, it was Bruce. They were just showing up left and right. So it was a good time. But yeah. What's going on down your way, buddy?
Well, I've got my daughter's moving back in town, and so we've been trying to get prepared for that. As far as the bees go, I've got all the queen excluders on. I think got them honey on to last a week or two, honey supers, and so they're bringing it in, and they're busy. They're packed out. They're doing well. We got the spring flow starting. We've got blackberry, privet, clover, tulip poplar, and many other things are blooming down here. So it's we were a little bit late, but now I think we're catching up pretty quick. And so that's kind of what's going on. Went out in them. I've got footage for a couple of videos. I've got one video pretty much edited. I got to figure out a thumbnail and title. I'm gonna get that uploaded pretty soon. I've got some video footage for another video if I get it done. But that's pretty much it. We've just been busy as heck. And my daughter's supposed to be rolling in either probably tomorrow afternoon or evening. And so we're kind of getting ready for this. That's why I'm down here. That's why I'm in this room, because they're going to be staying in this where my studio normally is. That's the guest bedroom. So they'll be there. So we're getting that kind of cleaned up. My wife is while I'm here. So I've been relegated to the honey room down here. So we'll see how it goes.
Are you sure it's just not that you got in trouble and you got shunned to the basement?
I did not get in trouble that I know of. Not yet, anyway. My wife's a great sport. She's awesome. So
yeah, good stuff. We actually, I tell you, today is I'm crossing my fingers and I'm gonna knock on wood. Everything that I could possibly do. Today is the last day that we have cold temperatures. It is right now, right here, it is 43. We have a low of 30 tonight. In the next, like the upcoming 2-week forecast, we have one day where it is 58. But other than that, every single day is in the 60s, and we've got like 4 or 5 days that are in the 70s. So it is going to get very busy very fast. I haven't done like a deep dive into my colonies just yet, breaking the medium and the deeps just to see what's in the deeps. Um, I'm going to do that here soon. Friday, I think we've got 76. So when I finish up work 3:30ish or so, I probably will cruise over and crack those boxes. Just it's time. I just need to get a feel for where they're at. If I do locate my queen, and it'll probably be easy. I mean, with 3 colonies, I could spend the time. Um, Lisa's going to be 90 there Friday. Well, you can take the 90. I'll take the 70s. But probably what I'm going to do here is get my queens shoved down into that lower deep and then separate out, the medium. That way, whatever brood is up there can just hatch out. And I want to get my queens isolated down in that lower deep. That way, when I do my splits here, I'm not having to worry about, well, there's brood in my medium frames also. So it'll be good though. I mean, hopefully I find a significant amount of brood in each of the colonies. I'm gonna hopefully I'm gonna be able to split those jokers, and fill my back row with them. So if I can get 7-8 frames of brood laid up, then I'll split them into 3. So, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't want to break them down so much that it just puts them kind of behind an 8 ball having to build up. But we'll see. So, but and I will have everybody. I will have more videos here soon too, just because when it's like today, when it's in the 40s, low tonight of 30, can't do much. So
yeah.
It's going to get real. I think here very shortly, things are just really going to ramp up.
I think we're in perfect situation here to start to try and make queens. I want to do it. I want to get out there and do it. I'm barely able to find enough time to do what I'm doing. So the young man, Jeremy, that helped me with the bees back early, helped me do those original splits back in February.
Mm-hmm.
He did some grafting, and we just put some sample queens of his right there by my apple and bees to see if they would get mated, see how they would do. And man, I got to tell you, Brian, I think I'm going to try and send you a picture of the brood pattern on those queens.
Okay.
We had, I think, 5 or 6 out of 10 that were successful. They were really early grafts. But the ones that turned out good really turned out nice. So let me see if I can get a picture of that and send you that brood pattern. It's one of the better brood patterns I've seen in a long time. They were phenomenal. So I think they got mated well. I know they got mated well. Now we'll see how they do attitude-wise moving forward, but I think they're going to be good.
Are you sending it on Messenger or?
What would you prefer?
Messenger.
Okay, let me.
Well, I'll just pull it up on the computer.
Yeah, it'll take me a minute here. Gotta do a screenshot and because it's a video. Let's see. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. I mean, I really am excited to try and make some queens. I just got to find the time to do it,
Yeah. Let's see here.
Messenger. I assume if anyone's got questions for us, just pop them in the comment section down there. In all caps, it's easier to see those so we can get them answered.
Oh, wow. Steve, you had some of my fall honey there? Oh, man. That's good stuff there, buddy. Here we go. I got it. I got a picture.
That's what it is. It's a picture. I screenshotted it.
Okay, here we go. Share screen. Look at that.
It's not bad, huh?
Wow. You know what, though? I don't know. I wouldn't be so happy with that because I see some holes in there.
Yeah, so there's a couple.
If I were you, you could send that one up here, and we could toughen that gal up. Let her go through a winter up here in Ohio, and she just that don't look right.
But those queens are from his favorite colonies. I think I'm not sure where he gets his bees from. Just kind of,
Wow.
but they're so he said the attitude of his bees is pretty good. At least the queen he got these from. But obviously they got mated really well, and hopefully they
Jeez.
mated with a bunch of my Hawaiian girls. So hopefully they're going to be
Yeah.
calm. So far they're doing good, but we'll see how they do
Wow.
as they get strong. I just put I have some 2-frame nuke boxes, deep nuke boxes. And if I don't want to use a lot of resources as far as bees go, those are perfect little mating nukes. The problem is with just 2
Yeah.
frames, they're a little tricky because, instead of the brood being kind of in a cluster, it's too tall. You just got to kind of play with them, but they've done well. When I made those splits, he said, "Hey, I got some queens. You want to try them out?" I said, "Sure." And so I just went and pulled a single frame of brood out of a bunch of like 10 colonies and put them in those 2-frame nukes and then a frame of foundation. I figured it was enough bees to see if they would get mated. And they, the ones that did really are doing well. And I actually put those in 5-frame nuke boxes the other day. One of the things I did, they were about to bust out of the boxes. They were doing so well. So it was
Wow.
pretty cool to
That's
see.
awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. I got a message today from somebody local asking me if I had access to any queens, and it's like,
No.
no queens up here yet. So I don't know any.
That's the tough thing about early spring. People can make splits so much sooner if you get access to early queens, but
Yeah.
it's just hard to find them. I've been fortunate, and then in some areas, like you guys, are just getting warm enough to really do a lot of stuff with your bees, and so many of the mated queens you can buy out of different places get gobbled up early by the commercial guys or the southern people. So,
Yeah.
but I know people down here are rolling out queen cells like crazy. A lot of like Florida beekeepers and
Mm.
local people queen cells are much easier because
Yeah.
you don't have to get them mated, and so that
Right.
really
Right.
helps in that respect. But
Yeah.
yeah, so we'll see how they do. I'm excited. I do want to try to graft some of my own. I'm pretty excited about it. I was going to do it this week, and then found out my daughter was coming middle of the week, and so I kind of had to get them all supered up and just let them be for a few days. She's
Yeah.
coming, her husband, and then their little boy, and then my son and his fiance are coming, and then my
Oh, wow.
his father, my son-in-law's dad, is helping them drive down, and so there's going to be like 8 or 9 people here at our house.
Oh, wow.
So the bees are my wife. I gotta be here. We got to kind of work together and be a team effort on
Yeah.
this thing. I don't. She shouldn't have to entertain all those people and
Right.
try to help get everybody get established. So for a few
Yeah.
days, we're going to be pretty crazy around here.
Wow.
But it'll settle down
Sure.
pretty quickly.
Is your daughter driving in from Utah?
Yep. Well, her and her husband and little boy and their dog and
Wow.
cat and all their
Oh
stuff.
my
And
gosh.
so yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
Wow. That's a long ride with a dog and cat
Yep, the dog and cat.
and a
Yep.
little
So
one.
yeah, it's
Wow.
a mess. Yep, it's a mess. But we'll be
Yeah.
all right. We'll be okay.
Wow. Yeah. Good stuff though.
I'm gonna take these headphones off because they're
Yeah.
not working right.
I got a question for you here.
Sure.
Eddie, is the privet flow happening by you, Bruce? Looks
Yep, I
like
got a
it's
video. I got a
down
video
here.
that's gonna. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
He
Oh
says
well.
here,
Where are you at, Eddie? Are you in? I know you're in the South, obviously, probably, but where are you at? Just put it in the comments. We
says I'm gonna
actually
dose and have
just.
Robin. Wow.
Where's he at? What?
I'll see.
Okay.
I'll watch the
Yeah.
comments for when he.
I actually am about to drop a video here in the next day or two. I've got it edited. I just need to figure out a title and thumbnail for it. So maybe a couple people will watch it. But in the video, I show some bees working some privet from this past. Actually, the Sunday afternoon, I went out and filmed a little bit just to complement the video. Yeah, I don't know, Eddie. Ours is just starting to go. About a week ago, it kind of started to bloom a little bit in the last week or week and a half, and it's not full on yet. But it's coming. And I saw some bees working some Sunday afternoon. I went out and just kind of looked at some different flowers. We got blackberry, we got privet, we got clover, I've seen some tulip poplar, and so we got some things going on now. Our biggest flow is not until the tallow, but we do have the spring things are blooming pretty good, and the bees seem to be working it. And I'm actually seeing some honey coming in my hives now. A few of them are starting to cap a little bit, a lot of nectar coming in, and the bees are extremely happy. Mike Berry posted a Facebook reel, I think, today, or on Instagram or Facebook, and it had the bees just working like crazy over there where he's at. So they're going after something over there, and he's in Southeast Louisiana. Maybe not privet, but there's something blooming over there too. It looked like, at least the way his bees were working, it looked like there was something blooming. But yeah, we've got some privet starting to bloom. It's not full on yet, but it is starting. And we got, privet is a hit or miss. Some years it'll bloom out, being completely full bloom, and the bushes are just covered in white flowers. Other years it's pretty anemic. So far right now, I think it's going to be a pretty good bloom, but we'll see. But yeah, right now it's pretty good out there. My bees are doing well. I wish I could get more video footage, but I'm just having a hard time with all the work I've got to do, getting a lot of really good videos out.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Another thing here, that one of the things here in the South, and I'm sure that he knows this, and Mike has mentioned it on his videos as well, I think, is that we have the pecan trees and the kudzu are two plants that when they start to leaf out, you're pretty much, I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen it freeze after those two plants leaf out, and they're both leafing out now. They're starting to. And so we got these big pecan trees with leaves just coming on, the bright green color. They're just coming in, and then the kudzu is actually leafing out too. And I'll show some video of that on my video. There's some B-roll, and then at the very end, I put a little short clip of all those different flowers and plants, so you can see kind of what they look like. The privet, I put the privet, the blackberry, a little bit of honeysuckles on there, blackberry, clover, and then I also showed pictures of video of the pecan and the kudzu leaves to see what they look like. So it's pretty exciting. This is the people talk about Christmas being the most wonderful time of year for beekeepers. This is the most wonderful time of year.
Oh, this is,
everything's just starting to kick in.
Yeah.
It's interesting because Keith says it's winding down up there. They're north of us, so yeah, I don't know. Oh well, he said because they must have a little. We have a little bit of an early flow, but it's not. I don't ever use that. I don't ever count on that for any honey. It's things like the red maple and we got the wild mustard and things like that around here that bloom. But all those things he just mentioned are beginning to bloom here. They're popping now. I think they're right on the front end of that. And so I don't know if we have a lot of black locust here. We might have some. I'm not real familiar with that, but I don't know about autumn olive either. But we do have blackberries, tulip poplars, and privet. I do have some bees in flight range of tulip poplars, but they're not all in that type of area. But I got privet and privet almost everywhere.
It's funny. Last night when I was down at that club, Chris that's in here, he was kind of up in my area, and when I told people, like there is not much up here right now, it just, I almost feel like we're behind where we should be. And he told people, he said, yeah, I mean, you look at the trees and it's just bare. But, things are starting to pop a little more. You could see it that they're wanting to, but it's, when we get highs in the mid 40s in the day and it's 30 degrees at night, it just, like he says, it's still winter up here. I mean, that's it. It just, it puts everything in a holding pattern.
Yeah, that's how it is. We've been in a holding pattern here. It seems like we're a little behind, but I think we're catching up real fast. I think we're getting where we need to be. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I know Bracken. I saw Bracken posted a video today. I haven't watched it yet, but I guess he got his bees back from pollination. Last week we had him on for a few minutes, and he was actually there in California picking up those bees. And so I saw Glade posted the video where he's been in his bees. He's kind of getting in them for the first time out there in Utah.
Awesome.
So things across the country are starting to kind of, Ian's put his hives out. I think he's put them out, even though it's cold, but he's getting them out. So I think pretty much everywhere people are able to start kind of peeking in a little bit. And so it's about to be real fun for everybody.
Yeah. It's going to get real fun. I mean, here, I know, I'm going to have a lot. Terry, hey, next Tuesday, Terry, we're going to chat. But like here, it's going to be game on, like I said, and it's going to be fun because like I was telling everyone yesterday, I mean, where I'm at right now, I do plan on, it'll probably be by August at least, I want to be at my 20 mark. So it'll be fun. I mean,
how many packages did you order?
I've got 6. and then I've got some nukes that I'm going to pick up from him as well. So, I could have gotten a couple other packages, but I want to get his genetics. So that's why, my packages that I get, they're going to end up getting replaced. The queens in them are going to end up getting replaced with the genetics that I have over there now. So now we'll see though. I mean, if I have any packages that perform really well, then I may just mark those. That way I know which is which.
Yeah.
But, I kind of want to isolate that yard with only those mutts, those hybrids that Greg has.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I need to try some of his again, but I've been so pleased, man. These queens I've gotten from Zach have been so good. And then I think I've had some that have maybe swarmed or replaced their queens that have mated with some of these Hawaiian queens. So I've got some, I think, crosses with local stock here now that are doing quite well. So it's been real fun. And man, I've got some that are just absolutely boiling out of the hives, just so full and busy and so much fun. But
yeah.
trying to find a video. I was out there Monday night because my daughter was coming in. I got a little bit freaked out. I think it was Saturday or Sunday. I think we were at my mom's house or we were somewhere, and I looked up and I saw a tulip poplar that was just blooming. It was actually in our neighborhood here down the street a little ways. So I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a tulip poplar that's blooming out. I didn't think they were blooming out quite yet. I thought it was a little bit later when they bloomed. And so I told Annette, I said, I've got to get boxes on. I've got one spot, the colonies at Honey Hill Farm that I manage for a friend of mine. He pays me to manage his hives, and it's a good relationship there. But that's another story for another day. But he's got these great big, huge tulip poplar trees right above his hives. So they're right there in the edge of the woods. And I'm like, I've got to get supers on them. So Monday night after work, I drove up. I just ran out of supers on Saturday when I was out doing stuff. So I drove up and I got a bunch of supers, and I put them on his, and then I went down to Applin. And that evening I was out there. It was just so pretty and just beautiful out there. It was perfect weather. The sunset was out there, and I did a reel. It's on Facebook and Instagram. And then I'm going to send you a video here if I can get it to you, Brian, of just how now all the bees don't look like this. So but some of them do, and this is just so much fun, man. I just absolutely love it.
That's Lee sent that over.
Yeah.
There's that one there.
I'm about to send you something pretty similar here.
And then right there, he sent over.
Yep. It's
slabs.
So much fun. But you have to remember too, so I think you have to take with a grain of salt when you get videos, you see videos from people in the South or anywhere for that matter, because these particular bees I just sent you are Italian Cordovans. They're extremely gentle. They're orange, just yellow color. They're a beautiful bee. But they build up, they brood up all winter. And so when the spring hits, I mean, they are ready to pack that box out. But look at that, man. That is, I think it's a double deep and a medium, or it might be a deep and a medium and two mediums. But the truth is, you can guess what I did with that box. I actually added another one I needed to for sure. But they are just I just love that. It's so cool.
That is insane.
That just does your body good. But now if these are Carniolans, they might not be this strong, but they would develop into this over time, or Caucasians, so you can't get frustrated if depending on what genetic of bees you have. And I think for beginners especially may not understand. And I have colonies, a lot of them that aren't like that because they're probably not the Italian bees or the Cordovan Italian bees or whatever. And so some of the bees I have, the local stock or remnants of Carniolans or Caucasians or whatever I have in my operation, they aren't quite that strong yet. Not that they're not putting honey in, they just don't look quite like that. Mm-hmm. But I love opening up a colony where you can't see the tops of the frames and they're just boiling with bees, and they're so gentle. Those bees are so gentle. You could just, like I say, you play the hula and they flip over and let you rub their bellies. I mean, they're so calm. They just don't care if you're there. They're so nice.
Yeah.
And they're doing such a good job. And so My biggest concern, we're going to have to see. I'm going to, I'm pretty much in it now until honey season's over. We're about to just have a lot of honey coming in. And so
Yeah.
when I take the honey supers
Our,
off and I assess for mites, then that'll be interesting to see how they do with the mites.
that colony there, where'd the queen come from?
I think that's a Hawaiian queen. It's one of the ones
Zach.
from Zach. Yeah, there's several. There are a lot of his that look like that. And that was probably a colony from last year, either last spring or possibly when I did some late summer splits. It might be one of those. The ones from the spring aren't built up quite that strong yet, but I mean they've only been in there for a couple of months, and so. But I do have honey supers on some of those as well. I mean, they built up enough to have honey supers. But they're the ones that have honey supers of his from the spring are in single deep. So I'm just doing some single deep management on some of those. But I'm going to watch them close. But I think I can start I'm stacking them up. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Keith went through 25 hives today. Only had capped cells in one hive, so did a split. Big hive.
Capped queen cells.
Big hive strategy's working. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, man, if I could get them all up to be nice, strong double deeps, going through winter, that would be great. But they're just not all like that. When I make splits, I do want to try and capitalize on getting honey out of them the first year. And so the question is, am I going to be able to, do single deep management and then add a second deep and build them up by feeding in the summertime? Do I want to do that, or just kind of let them do what they do, and then they'll build up during the winter into double deeps, and next spring they'll be like that hive we just saw? So that's still something I'm trying to figure out. I found that to maximize honey, what I don't just say my hives are all going to be single deeps or double deeps, or deep and mediums. I just let them. I kind of try to assess how they're doing, kind of try to assess how strong they are in the spring, and then they might be a single deep with queen excluder and supers if it's a newer hive, or like on some of them I ran out of supers the other night again, so I just put double deep. I put a second deep on there I pulled a frame of brood up or two. I tried a couple different things. I checkerboarded some, and then I pulled a frame or two up and tried that. So when I ran out of honey supers that I had on my truck that evening, I just went ahead and made some of those newer hives double deeps. They may not make honey for me this year, but they'll be built up nice and strong. So hopefully they'll be good. Strong splits, Bruce. I guess DC is asking if I'm going to make strong splits out of that. I'm kind of done making splits for right now. I say that's my plan, is just to let these hives blow up into honey producing colonies. I have to make a lot of honey because, we had last year I ended up with 9,300 pounds. It was 155 5-gallon buckets, 750 gallons or whatever it was. It was a lot of honey. And I'm down to, let's see, probably 12 or 13 buckets left now. And so we should, hopefully it'll get us through till we harvest. Maybe it won't, but I've pulled a lot of daggum honey this year.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying, my biggest emphasis is I've got to make honey. And so that's why I'm trying to maximize that. I like to do those early splits, and we can do that here if you have availability of queens. And then I like to kind of settle in right now. Now, if I make some queens, which I plan on doing, I'll probably pull out some small little mating nuke type splits for the queens to mate with. So those, I guess you consider those splits. But as far as making strong splits in hives that I want to make into nukes and into more colonies, to sell or to produce more colonies for myself, I don't plan on doing a lot more of that right now. Last year, I actually did some later summer splits, like in July or August, and I fed them. I was really careful. I tried to do it the right way. And I got some more queens from Zach, and it worked out really well. I did lose a few of those, but it's real hard on it to do it late in July or August. It's hard to make splits, but I did it, and a lot of them did really well. And that one that we just saw may have been one of those. I don't know if it was one of those or one from last spring, but that may have been one of our late summer splits from last year. I don't remember for sure.
Wow.
So I hope that answers DC's question. That I don't plan on making a lot more strong splits. That's not my goal. Now I'm focused pretty much on honey. One thing I want to do this year, I'm going to try a different technique. And I know these are getting pretty old. This is from last year, and I kind of messed them up a little bit, but they're not as pretty as they were because I stacked them up too tall and I kind of pushed them together. But I've got the simple comb here from last year. It's one of my simple combs.
Wow.
And so
look at that.
I'm planning on making a lot. I've got 20 frames worth of this, which is what, 20 times 8, 160 of these worth to try and
Yeah.
make. And I'm going to try a little different system. I've talked to Mick out there and with Simple Comb, and there's a way you can do it. I think instead of just filling up an entire super with these things and hoping they'll fill it, I'm going to try to get the bees to dry out some frames and cap them of honey in a 10 frame box, and pull out the middle 2, maybe the middle 4, but the middle 2 frames, make sure everything's mashed together really good, and then put the Simple Comb in the middle, and hopefully they'll draw that out. And I may try to put some sort of a finishing or a following board in there so they don't dry it out too thick. I don't know. I'm working with Mick on that, but that's going to happen here in the next few weeks. I'm going to try it that way, because last year I did a super that was completely full of the Simple Comb, and they did a good job with the middle ones. You know, this is some of that, but when it got to the outside, they didn't fill them out very well. And they had some that were too thick. I ended up with 32 that would have been sold. I haven't sold any of these. I just kind of been giving them away or eating them myself. It was an experiment last year, but I did end up getting 32 that were nice like this, that would have been sellable. But I will tell you, if you try Simple Comb, when you stack them up, don't push them together, because then they don't look quite as pretty as they did before you push them together. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
But they're beautiful, and they're really good. I really like them, and I think they'll be a hit when I finally do try to sell a few of them, if I can get some of them out there in the market and see what people think.
Hey, we got 2 people here asking about Hawaii queens.
Okay, you have to go on Facebook, on Messenger, Zach Heinzelman. That's HeinzTel, Heinzelman. Heinzelman Apiaries is another. You can go to on Messenger and message Zach. Last I heard, he was sold out until June, but you could check with him and see. But I love his queens. I really like them, and I've had real good success with them so far. And really high percentage of acceptance this year. I think I was around 90% acceptance in like February. You know, before we really should have been making splits and put queens in there. They had a real good acceptance rate, and maybe 85 to 90%. I think initially it was like 90% plus, and then I did lose a few later for whatever reason. They superseded it and didn't really like the queen, but I think it was 85 to 90% acceptance. And some of those, I got 55 queens from him, and some of them were actually, I was trying to tame down the mean colonies. I put them in colonies that really had probably too many bees. I just killed the queen and put her in there in a big packed out hive of bees, and a lot of them just did great. They just accepted them and they took over the hive. And so I do like his queens, but I really do want to try to start making some of my own queens. It's just, with me, it's 100% a time frame thing. Like, I have the kit in my truck. I have everything. The timing of it to get to the bee yard on the right day, to be able to harvest the cells on the right day, and to be able to get to everything. It's just been difficult for me. I've been putting so much effort into trying to manage my bees I already have, you know. So that's
what I just heard? Everybody, and this is an announcement here. This announcement time. If Greg were here, he could hit them buttons, and we'd have sound and we'd have all kind of stuff. I'll just do this. So we got fireworks and all kind of stuff. There's all kind of noise and all stuff. But what I just heard out of Bruce is that he is soon to retire, and he is going to be a full-time beekeeper so that he could raise his own queens.
I'm hoping.
Congratulations, Bruce.
As soon as I get permission from the boss, I would do it tomorrow if I can get permission.
So Bruce, listen, there's these times in life that, see, how do I put this? Sometimes it's easier, or maybe not easier. It's best to ask for forgiveness and for permission. Okay. So, certain things, and maybe that's one of them. I don't know.
I don't know if retirement is one of those times.
Look at that right
there are things, but that might be a little bit of a big deal there, Tom. Welcome aboard, Tom. Thanks for joining us, coming on tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Brian and Bruce.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, hashtag cloakboard. I actually tried the cloakboard a few weeks ago. I think I told the story maybe previously. And I swear, I had it all set up, beautiful hive. I went to my favorite hive colony that I have, grafted. I was so excited, put those grafts in there. came back the next day. That was on a Saturday. Came back the next day, and there were only 2 cells started. I'm like, man, that was awful. I'm like, well, whatever. I guess that was a fail. And I'd use a cloakboard system. Like, well, dang, that sucked. And so then I went back, a few days later to actually harvest the cells, and they had basically destroyed those, and they drawn comb. I looked on the comb, and there was a queen walking around. So obviously I shook a queen in that top box. It was supposed to be my starter. So that didn't work very well. So I think I really felt like I was in a pretty good groove grafting. I think the grafting wasn't the problem. I think the problem was that there was a queen in the box that I was trying to use as my starter. So that was an epic fail, one of the dumbest things I've done. But what I did when I went to actually put the grafts in, I think I just grabbed a few bees, a few frames from some other colonies in the bee yard just to make sure they were really populated. Looked for the queen, didn't see her, and so I shook them in there, and I'm sure I just shook a queen in there because there was also a queen in the bottom box. There were eggs in the bottom box and the top box. So even though I moved all the bees down below to set up the cloak board, and I was pretty sure I had the queen down below, I shook a queen in there. And I don't have any idea which hive the queen came from because all the hives, they got brood in them pretty much. So they replaced the queen. Maybe they're going to I don't know. But anyway, that's just beekeeping for you. Ideally, see, that's my problem when I don't have enough time is I do stuff like that. If I had the time, I would have been way more careful, but you get in a hurry and you just kind of, and it works. Most of the time it works, but in that particular case, that was just an epic fail. But
stuff like that happens from time to time because when you have a full-time position at a regular day job or own your own company, whatever, and then you're beekeeping as, say, maybe a sideliner or a heavy hobbyist, whatever you like to call that, there's times that you have to play firefighter, right? So sometimes you have to put out the fires that require the most attention, and then everything else gets left by the wayside. And, I think that happens with everybody in probably just about every scenario of life, but I know that's happened to me because honestly, just the other day, when you're talking about Bruce shaking a queen out, I did that. I have no idea. I know what yard that she was shaken from, but I don't know what hive it would have been in one of the 27 colonies that are in a yard.
Yeah.
I found in one of I call it a brood hauler, which basically is an inner screen board on the bottom of an 8-frame box, which I run 8-frame equipment. And then I put brood inside there when I have excess. After I make my split, and then I'll use it on another colony later on or make a split above a different colony. So we made just short of 100 splits within the last week and a half. And I have them all cooking, I'll say, over a double screen board over a parent colony. And in my brood hauler, when I was looking down at the bottom one evening, I looked at it, there's a clump of bees down there. And anybody who's seen a clump of bees in an area that's not in an actual hive or something, there's something up. And you start staring at that clump of bees, and you take your finger and you flick it around, and you see this little girl in there that's got this large abdomen, and you're like, she doesn't belong there. And she's not in a cage. So you realize that she came out of one of the parent colonies that you may have pulled brood out of. So my guess is somehow she must have slipped above our queen excluder because several yards we shook bees down into the bottom box. If we couldn't find the queen, put our excess brood above that, then we pulled it from it. So somehow, some way, she was missed. And there's a colony out there making queen cells right now. So
yeah, they figure it out, man. They usually figure it out. And if they don't, then you can always drop. If you find one that you think is queenless, you can always drop a frame of eggs in there. Brian, what do you call it? If in doubt, egg it out. Is that what you say?
When in doubt, egg it out.
And it's funny because this is a lesson. We may have discussed this last time you were on, Tom, but it's a lesson that I think that never really grows old. Mm-hmm. Hey, Zach's in here, by the way. Zach, we were talking about your queens a little while ago, and you missed it, but I think you saw my Facebook post where I showed a story where I showed a picture of one of your queens is just boiling out of the hive, just doing real well. But welcome aboard, Zach. Zach, that's Zach Heinzman right there with the queens. But he says aloha, he's out in Hawaii. But
everybody that's looking for the Hawaii queens,
that's your man.
Yeah, he's the guy.
Zach,
right there.
I did tell him though. I think you're probably sold out until June, so. Maybe you'll get some people asking about it, but I did mention that to him. So anyway, my mentor, when I first got started in bees, I didn't have a clue. I was addicted from the first time I really got into bees, and I just was so excited, but I didn't understand a lot of the basic principles. And he told me when I very first got my bees, he said, you have to control your mites and beetles. And so I I didn't really listen to him. I said he just would help me. He would give me treatments to do, and he would kind of tell me what to do, and I would just try and do it halfway. Yeah, that would be great, Russell. We probably should do that, or I should do that. We'll try and figure that out. And I think Zach would love to come on if he can find the time. He's real busy over there in Hawaii, but maybe we'll do that, Russell. That would be fun. But anyway, so he told me that, first of all, mites and beetles, which, a couple of years ago I decided I was going to just survival of the fittest, right? I was going to do treatment free that way. I know there are treatment free beekeepers that really work hard at it to develop their line of genetics, and they do a good job. But I was the treatment free guy that just said survival of the fish, just let them die. But I found out pretty quick I didn't like that very much when I just had very few hives surviving. And so
it's a nice thought though, isn't it?
But I got more serious about it. And finally, I'm maybe starting to kind of figure out a regimen, or I think that the IPM is really good to be able to figure out what your problem is, and then be able to really, if you can shift and adjust and look at what's going on, then you can do a better job. But he told me, he said, the first year or two, I would just let the bees grow. I didn't understand spacing. I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. And so that first spring, I think it was, I don't think it was the first year. It may have been, it was more likely the second year I had bees. It may have been the first year, but I started going to my colonies and I couldn't find the queen. I didn't see brood, and I would just call him. I'd say, David, man, I said, I need a queen. I'm queenless. And he'd say, okay. And he'd sell me. He used to sell queens as well. He'd make a few queens here or there to sell. So he started selling me some queens. And after a while, he's like, now, Bruce, I recommend you just wait a week or two. You might just find that they've made their own queen. No, Dave, there's not a queen there. I need a queen. So he'd sell them to me. I think it was that second year, late in the second year, maybe even the third year, I got tired of spending money on queens. And back then I think he'd sell them to me for $20 or $25. And so I just decided to listen to him, and I decided to not buy queens every time I thought my bees were queenless. And I can still remember vividly up at the farm up there. This was before I had very many colonies. I remember going, it was kind of in the evening time, and I was looking in there, and I think I kind of knew what eggs looked like, but I didn't really know what like newly hatched, like what I call milk brood looked like, where it's just brand new, fresh with the royal jelly looking stuff down in there. And I called him. I said, I don't really see a queen, but I see this milky stuff in the bottom. He's like, Bruce, that means you've got a new queen. So I learned the lesson from that if you think you're queenless, just give it a week or even two, and then go back and check. And I think 80 to 90% of the time when I do that, even now, I come back and there's brood in there. There's either brand new, freshly laid eggs or larvae, or, because those virgin queens, they're so small. And unless you really look closely, you may not see them. But if you just give them some time, many times the bees have got it figured out. Another thing that you hear Mike Berry talking a lot about when a hive that's queenless is, are they polishing the cells? A lot of times you can look in those cells and you'll see how they look polished and clean and shiny. Many times that's an indication there's probably a queen about to lay. And so that's another thing. Now, if they're putting nectar everywhere and you don't see a queen, then there's probably a pretty good chance she's not in there. But if there's a queen in there that needs to lay, they'll try to clean out some space for her to try to lay something. And so that's a lesson I've kind of learned. If I see, I was just in some colonies the other day, and I can't remember if it was Saturday or Monday, and I had a colony or two that were kind of like that just I didn't see any eggs, and I thought it had been too long. Maybe they needed a queen, but they looked like they were polishing the cells, and so I'm going to give them another week or week and a half, and just see what happens. And but that's been some wisdom from my mentor. Those are probably the couple of lessons I learned the most from David. Was number one, you got to control the mites and beetles. You got to have some sort of management system for that, whatever it is. And number two, you need to make sure you just give your bees a little time, have some patience.
Yeah.
So I think that's. It's kind of funny. I actually had he's a guy, he's just over here. I'm kind of mentoring a little bit. Just kind of out of fun. He lives he's a wealthy guy kind of over here in the neighborhood. And he's got a couple of hives over there, and he's just a super nice guy. And he called me, was kind of in a bind, didn't know what he was seeing. So I went over and we went through his colony. He has a flow hive, and he's done well with it. He's really, really good. He's taking care of his bees. He's doing a good job. But we went in there and they were queenless, didn't see a queen anywhere. And he had gone through a few days before, and he had destroyed a couple of queen cells. And he was real worried about it. He was second guessing. That's why he called me. And I said, well, let me come take a look at it. So I went over there, just a few minutes from here. And we got in there, and I didn't see a queen anywhere. And he was just kind of he's really attentive, listening to what I said. I said, but here's what we'll do. And we went down and I told him, I said, I'm going to go do my bees today. I said, there's a pretty good chance you got a queen in here, but I'm going to go down. If I get a chance later today, I'll grab a frame of eggs from one of my colonies and bring it up here. So it was late that evening, and I went up there, and he had left town. He was down in Florida. I think he went down. They got a house down there, and I put a frame of appropriate eggs and stuff in there. I egged it out, Brian, so to speak. Just if I got one from one of my nice Hawaiian colonies, I thought, well, this is an insurance policy. He thanked me, and then we went in a week later, and sure enough, there were eggs in there, and they had not formed any queen cells on the frame I put in there. And we found the queen, marked her, so she just had not been mated yet. So I think it's just kind of wise to be patient. Somebody put in all caps patience. I think it's wise to be patient sometimes.
Sometimes we try to rush Mother Nature, and often it doesn't work out well. I'll give you for example. So I was due to build roughly about 100 nukes in the first week of April, and that's when I had 140 queens coming up here. And I was dead set on getting it done, and because I wanted to have them done by a certain date. Long story short, we had nothing but rain all that week. I'm talking not just a little rain here or there. It rained. I mean, we had here was like 4 or 5 inches. Slightly east of us, over where JW is at, a few hours from me, he had 8.5 inches of rain. So basically, we got a monsoon of rain in a very short amount of time. So I actually called the queen breeder that I used down in North Florida and said, "Hey, can we delay those? Keep them in the colonies for another week?" He said, "Absolutely." And so anyway, we ended up delaying it one more time by a day because of my overnight temperatures ended up being, I think it was like 27, 28, 29, just for a couple hours in the morning. And we were worried about the overnight shipping on the cargo hold of the plane. That's not really climate controlled, and we didn't want to damage ovaries in any way, shape, or form, or damage any of the viability of the sperm and or spermatheca, things like that. So we went ahead and paused them just a little bit, which I wasn't fond of doing because I had a timeline set up. But again, Mother Nature, she has a mind of her own, and if we try to rush these things, it'll likely end up having large failure rates. So there's one of those lessons for us, and I think there's a little lesson in there for us all when it comes to Mother Nature. Just like somebody else said in the comments, be patient. So that's a hard one, though.
It is.
Oh yeah,
especially up north where you guys are, Brian. Especially up north where it's April and you're seeing us down here. It's hard. It's got to be hard. It's got to be hard.
I mean, I'm to the point now, like I was telling people last night, it's just like, we'll start when we start, Yeah. So, but I did tell everybody last night, though, I said, like right now where I don't have as much equipment being utilized out in the yard, this is a golden opportunity for me to clean up. If I've got frames that needed cleaned up, I can clean up everything. That way, once I do get busy, I'm not stuck behind the 8 ball having to worry about, oh, darn it, do I have enough frames? Oh, do I need this? Do I need that? So I'm using the time while I have it now just to make sure that everything is prepped and ready. So,
yeah, that's about all you can do is try to prepare for the worst, and then see what happens. I guess that's the beauty and also the negative side of when it comes to agriculture. Animal husbandry, all those good things. There's no certainties, there's no guarantees, or there's very few, and you just have to be able to be very liquid and roll with the punches.
Yep.
I was stressing out pretty bad about it. She's like, you need to calm down, and I'm like, no, I told the people this is what I was going to do, and this is what I'm going to have done. So I mean, I'm pretty hard on myself when it comes to that, but. I also learned too to leave yourself, when you kind of understand the industry a little bit, leave yourself a little bit of wiggle room in there too, where it's like, well, my expected date on nuke delivery is going to be this, but there's a lot of variables that are out of our control that have nothing to do with what we're going to do or our performance. So we have to take that into consideration.
Tom, let me ask you a question about nuke cells.
Yeah.
I've sold a few nukes over the years, but I've been hesitant to get into it big time. Number one, historically, I do lose a fair number during the winter, and I just always trying to replace, and I'll sell a couple here or there, but I usually don't sell very many. Number two, my bees have a reputation for being a little spicy, which, it's just, it concerns me. I'm getting better with that.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, I just really worry about quality, and I worry about them not being successful with the new person that purchases them. So what I've done when I've sold nukes a lot in the past is I'll go find my strongest ones and I sell them.
Mm-hmm.
I've never sold a lot. I mean, I may have sold the most 6, 8, maybe 10 in a year. And I've looked in recent years, I haven't sold hardly any. I've sold one this year so far, but how do you kind of get your brain in the right place to where you feel confident with the product you provide, that you don't worry about, when they leave your door? Are they going to buy, 5, 10 nukes from you and 3 of them don't do well or don't make it, or they get an attitude? How do you kind of put your brain in the place to where you just don't worry about that? Or how do you manage that? How do you manage your customers if there is a problem? Just kind of walk through your nuke sales, what a good nuke looks like, and then how you manage your nuke sales a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know what? That's a really tough question, and then I think that's a hard one to answer. But I'll kind of talk through it, how I decipher it, and the methods that I work through. So last year at my peak, I had 175. That was nucleus colonies, larger production colonies, and so on and so forth. I dialed that back down to about 150-ish going into winter. I called a lot of things that I didn't like. Queens that were maybe a little older, maybe didn't get mated well, whatever that might be, those got culled. And I don't, the beauty about that is when you're culling a colony or a queen, when you just have 1 or 2 hives, you will pour endless amounts of time and effort and energy and money into coddling that colony.
Yeah.
When you get a few under your belt, you don't do that anymore. You quickly start to understand and realize that it's much easier to let a colony go and then that next year pull a split out and then maybe hold that back for yourself or fill in your spaces. And that's kind of what I've done. So anyway, we came out, I'll say this was my worst winter in 8 years of me beekeeping. And we've scaled every single year from 3 to 8 and on up. We've doubled in size about every year. Now, for people that don't know me in the chats, I don't have any aspirations of being a commercial beekeeper. Melissa and I call ourselves heavy hobbyists. Everybody has a term that they'll use between however many colonies you have, and that's fine. But
Tom is in denial.
I heard that. It sounded like it was coming from above, Brian. What was that?
Yes, I don't know. I didn't catch it.
So anyway, so what I've done in the past is I've purchased nukes and then resold them up here from people that I've met, operations that I've looked at before in the past. And this was the first year that I am 100%. I'm bringing in queens because we can't have them quite this early to be able to deliver a nuke by the very first part of May. So I bought the queens, but there's 2 different people I had considered for my queens, the people that I've seen these queens in the colonies. So I knew how they performed. I knew their operation. So it wasn't just pulling a ticket out of a hat, to see who it was. But so basically what I'm looking for is when we're selling nukes now, I want to be able to turn out, like you said, Bruce, the best quality product that I can. So if I am going to sell 100 nukes, I might want to add 20% to that, and you know what, you could have more failure than that. You could have better success than that. It really kind of varies, but I would add 20% to that. And that's kind of what I've done. And I'm about at the end of the sales that I'm going to let go.
So when you say add 20%, you mean you would make 120 and then take the 100 best?
Correct. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. And you know what? I would say there's probably times that's I'm banking a little bit too much on I'm kind of looking at that 80%, and that could go either way. I could have 95, I could have 75%, but I'm really, and if there's a queen that just doesn't have a good laying pattern, because I'm not just going to drop a queen in a nuke and say, here we go. It's, she gets accepted and say, good luck, and send it down the road. We want to hold on to that nuke for no less than 3 weeks. So I can see how good the brood pattern looks inside there. If it looks a little spotty or something's off, we'll hold it back and see if it looks like that it needs a little bit more TLC, a little bit more time to grow, or maybe just the queen wasn't well mated. Maybe she could have been damaged, whatever it might be. Those will get culled. If I have a colony that seems aggressive, I'll keep that one, but I wouldn't send it to a new beekeeper, because the last thing that I want to do is crush somebody's spirit when it comes to, you know, fresh into beekeeping and they have an aggressive hive and they're like, is this what this is about? I don't think we would be good stewards of, you know, our industry by doing that. So I sell pretty standard, a 5-frame deep nucleus colony. I don't do mediums or anything like that. I stick to the standard. That's kind of how we manage our brood boxes, all deeps. My honey supers are all mediums, and I don't intermingle the two. I want to see no less than a good solid 3 frames of brood in there. And when you open that box up, I want to see 5 frames of coverage in there. Now, I will preface that and say there is a point in which you would turn out a nuke to a newbie and it's too strong. And you're probably saying, well, how is that possible? And I'll tell you how. If you give a nucleus colony that is absolutely busting at the seams to a new beekeeper, somebody that has no experience, it is highly likely that that colony will end up swarming or build swarm cells and probably do that within the first 2 weeks. Because if you have a colony that is busting at the seams that hard, if you just throw all 5 frames in the center of, say, 10 frame deep, 8 frame, whatever it is that you run, and you don't checkerboard a couple frames in there, it is highly likely that they are not going to recognize, if you take them out of that 5-frame nuke, put them in the box, it takes a short period of time for them to recognize additional space within the colony. So it is more than possible for that to happen. If I had one that was busting at the seams, that was too strong, I'd either dial it back just a little bit. You like what I did there, Brian? Dialing it back. Or I would then sell that to an experienced beekeeper who might understand or know, say, hey, look, here's the deal. When you get this nuke into your box, you need to checkerboard a couple frames into the outside and span those out just a little bit. And it's always helpful with drawing comb. So I don't know if I really fully answered that question and all, you know, what you were asking there, but that's kind of how, in just a nutshell, Melissa and I work through, you know, the nucleus colonies. One thing that we had planned to do, and I have failed to do that yet, was I was going to send out either a paper with, especially new beginners, if they're experienced, I'm not really as concerned about it. They probably know the ropes, but a checklist of what they should be seeing, what they should be looking for, how to install it, what to do week 1, because what I would suggest to somebody is install the nucleus colony, put some a 1-to-1 sugar syrup on it, and leave them alone for 7 days. I realize you're going to be wanting to itch to get into it, but let them settle in for a couple weeks first and let them get some growth on them before you start touching them too much. Then we'd say week 2, you want to see growth on there at that point in time. I would say by week 3 in our spring, if you had good heavy waxed foundations, they should be pushing out pretty hard in that 10-frame box by that point, you know. So that's what we would expect to see. We were also talking about putting some links into an email that say, okay, for you beginners, this is what you're looking for, and show a video of us actually installing that nucleus colony into a box, what they should be seeing at that point in time. And that can be a little bit variable too, based upon temperature and, you know, you guys should
go throw together like an unlisted playlist where it is just that. Yeah. Where you could say, you know, just, hey, whatever, you know, thank you for purchasing a nuke from us. You know, here's typically what we recommend. Sure. And you could even then do like a week 1, you know, or a 7-day check-in. Okay, you know, here's what you should be seeing. Here's what you should do, you know, 2 week. And then you never have to worry about it. You could just tell them, hey, here's, you know, we'll email you links that contain the videos that walk you through what you should do for the next, say, month. Then you never have to worry about it.
Yeah. Well, I've heard a couple people on some other chats say, well, I don't sell nukes anymore. I don't want to do it because they're too heavy-handed on the service side. And I don't disagree with that. But I also would say you can probably minimize some of that everybody's personality is different. You're going to sell a
Right.
nuke to somebody and you'll never hear from them again. And you happen to touch base with them 2 years later and like, oh, yeah, that thing's doing amazing. Everything was well.
Yeah.
And then you'll have another personality that comes in and they will text you or call you every week about this, that, or the other. It's just a personality difference. Some people need validation on everything that they do. Funny story, a gentleman named Jim Masucci, he was a researcher for Monsanto here in St. Louis, and a good friend of mine, and he's recently retired. I had him to come to do a presentation at our club there at the Eastern Missouri Beekeepers. And he goes through his presentation and talk. And I told him, I'm like, I'll never forget this part. I thought it was really funny. He goes through an entire list of how to manage for mites, and he breaks it down: mite wash, what all you're looking for, what you should be seeing, and then also different treatment regimens and things like that. At the end of it, he says, okay, I've given you guys all the tools that you need to make this work. But for those of you who want to be told what to do, this is what I do. And I was actually sitting there and I spun around to look at the crowd just to see what the reaction was. And almost immediately, I'm telling you, if there wasn't 50%, it could have been 60%. Everybody either pulls out their phone and they're taking a picture of the slideshow up there, or they're looking down, they're writing notes. And I'm like, thinking to myself, you've got to be kidding me. He just gave you all the tools that you needed to make a successful decision without telling you what to do. And here everybody's like, I just want to be told what to do, So
Yeah.
there is that. You're going to have those personalities. So
Yeah,
yes, it is.
there is a YouTube personality who is one of the biggest on YouTube, who the reason he is so successful is because he tells people what to do.
Yeah.
He says, if you see this, do this. And that's, I think that's especially common with new beekeepers that don't, because they just don't have any idea what to do, and if they're open-minded and just want to know. But I think as you develop some experience, you begin to see that there might be better ways, and there are multiple ways to do things. You don't have to do whatever so-and-so says on YouTube. And so I think I think it's a growth that you develop as a beekeeper, because it just, at first you don't have any idea, but yeah, that is true. There are a lot of people that just want to be told what to do. Like, I see this in my hive, now what? And it makes sense, but it does. Yeah.
I would rather somebody say X, Y, and Z, here are the tools, and I'll carve my own. But that's just kind of how I've always done things,
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
You'll get people that say, oh, you can't do that, and be like, really? It's like, huh. And I'll go out and try it. It may be an utter failure, but it's always that testing the ropes. My mom would tell me as a kid, hey, Tom, don't touch that pot on the stove. It's hot. I'm like, oh, okay. And you reach up and you touch it, right? It's, I don't know if that's not being too brilliant, or if that's just, you always have to test theories of everything, right?
Yeah.
Hey, answering Matt's question there. So I'm looking at 2 gallons of feed, specifically kind of what you're talking about there. But I will say this, some of these nukes that we built actually were pretty strong, and they're already foraging pretty good. So I'll play it by ear, because the last thing I want to do is plug them out before that happens. And I used a lot of drawn comb in there, very little just blank foundation. So I don't need them. I don't need them to draw me a lot of comb in there. So, and you can probably get by with a little less syrup feed on that. But I would say for stimulation purposes, and I did more of a 3/4 to 1, not a full 1 to 1, just for stimulation on them. And, looking to fill their bellies, it'll help with queen acceptance. If you need some white comb built in there, it'll get that done for you. But I would say that is a little bit variable based upon if you were in any kind of flow, which we're in a little bit of one, not a full heavy stream here in and around the St. Louis area. So, but as a rule of thumb, I'm looking at 2 gallons per each colony. So that's kind of what I've factored into the cost of building a nucleus colony. People don't think about that when you're building nukes, all your costs associated with it, and syrup is one of them.
Yeah. This is another good question here. So with new foundation, would you start to checkerboard it when they start drawing out some of the frames? I run all deep, so I've heard pulling brood up into the supers also works.
Yeah, it absolutely does. The only thing I would caution Tiny Creek with, and I'm not sure exactly where you're at as far as north to south, be cautious. It definitely works. Be cautious on doing that, because the last thing you want to do is separate brood too far from the nest when they have to cluster back up because you have some cold spells. Ask me how I know that. You get a little bit too antsy in the spring, you pull some brood up, you get a couple weird Missouri cold snaps, it'll chill the brood, because what'll end up happening is bees don't like to come off a brood, but they will if they need to cluster up tight. And sometimes if you pulled it up into an upper box and you only did, say, one frame, and you don't have enough bee coverage inside that box, they'll draw back down to the main brood nest, which will likely be in the bottom box. So that would be the only thing that I would preface checkerboarding. But often Melissa and I do checkerboard frames in. Sometimes I sacrifice honey production on a colony if they seem like they're really good and motivated at drawing comb. That's all I'll do, is cycle combs in and out of that colony until they quit making it. But Melissa and I have been on a growth spurt ever since we started, so I've been less concerned about honey production.
Who's this Melissa person that you talk of? Because I've heard kind of like some background noise, but usually, like, when I do hear it though, and I'm sure you've watched Peanuts. You know how when the adults are talking, all you hear is that wah, wah. That's all I hear. So I don't understand it. It might be like microphone issues that you're having.
You know what? It very well could be. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's a little chatter in the background. I'm not sure where it's coming from.
It's your conscience.
Oh, my conscience just spoke to me, and it sounds like a female.
I heard that too.
You got a female conscience, Tom.
I know. That's because I have a tender heart, Bruce. That's why. I'm a lover, not a fighter guy.
There's another good question from Tiny Creek there, Brian.
Yeah. And I tell you, I would have absolutely no idea. So what I'm going to do for Tom is I'm going to read this so that I'm basically going to contribute to this stream.
Okay.
So right now, and I don't want to hear no background noise there. That the teacher, I hear wah wah wah. I hear it back there. So
she could come on this chat if she wanted to, right?
She could.
She could theoretically. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, but how many hives would you
There it is again. But that was more of a male voice. It sounded like. Did you hear that?
Yeah. The other one is like real screechy and it gets whiny every once in a while.
Is it borderline and naggy, you think?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, don't make me go.
Hey, Brian's gonna I think Brian's gonna make me open my mouth and put my foot in it.
Brian says this from like 1,000 miles away over the airwaves.
I know, right? Yeah. I like what he's doing, man. I mean, I absolutely love kicking the hornet's nest. It's just one of my favorite things to do ever since I was a kid.
Yeah. So how many hives would you suggest to have to raise 50 queens and sell 15 to 20 nukes?
Well, for just raising the queen part, probably one or two. That's all you really need. I mean, because you could throw, if you had bust in a colony, I mean, you could raise 50 queens out of that fairly easy, But I would say 15 to 20 nukes, that's a good question. And, that can also be a variable answer as well. But what I would say is if I wanted to sell 15 to 20 nukes, look at it this way. So I'll kind of tell you my experience. So typically where I'm at in Missouri, we get a lot of the cold of the cold, the warm of the warm, but really, so I'm a much colder climate than Bruce is, but I'll also say I'm kind of in between Bruce and Brian. Now, Brian is more east of me, but he's further north and he's experiencing a lot more colder temperatures than I have. I've probably had anywhere between good colonies, 8 to 9 frames of brood in there. Brian probably doesn't have that right now based upon what he's been talking about with his temperatures and such. So when I am making splits on my colonies, of course, this is a little bit variable as far as the timing of the year, but usually around the second week of April, as a rule of thumb where I'm at, I can typically have on a good strong colony, I can usually have probably 6+ frames of brood in there at that point in time. So if I do it like this, by April 15th, if I leave behind in my colonies a good solid, not spotty, a nice good frame, both sides, that's what I count as one frame of brood. If I have 4 of those frames in my lower brood box with a little bit of food there, space for her to lay, I can pull additional resources up above, say like I do a queen excluder, pull them up above that, because I'll go through a bunch of colonies, find the queens, push her down. If I don't, I shake them down, queen excluder, put the box back on, bring my additional brood up above them. Typically, I can have at least 3, 4, sometimes 5 additional frames of brood that I can pull from. Now, depending on where you're at in your area, I would say that you can make a 2-frame split as long as you do an extra shake of bees in there. If you're still having some cold temperatures, because you need to be able to thermal regulate that nest. If you don't, maybe throw 3 frames of brood in there with an extra shake. I did mine above a double screen board, all of them. So that's my thermal regulation as the parent colony. So I can get by with a few less shakes inside the colony. But I would say, so theoretically I can pull 1 to 2 splits out of each one of those colonies. So, I mean, you can do the math on that. If you can only pull 1 split out of that colony, say being conservative, you need 15 to 20 colonies. And all I'm doing is I'm dialing it back so that they don't swarm before my main honey flow hits. But I can still produce a large crop, leaving that much brood behind at that point in time. So that'll change for everybody that's further south and or further north. So if you want to be conservative on that, you wanted to do 20 nukes, I would say if you had a good solid 30 colonies coming out of winter, more than doable, and you could raise 50 queens without a whole lot of effort.
What I just heard is that in my upcoming years, with my 20 to 25 number where I want to sit at, if I can actually keep bees alive, that I could sell like 15 nukes and do some queens.
Absolutely, you could. Absolutely. And here's the thing I would say, Brian, if you don't mind killing a little bit of honey production, you could probably do that with less colonies. I mean, I'm prefacing that on the fact that you're still going to produce a nice honey crop. And everybody's area is going to be a little different. Bruce may produce more honey per hive than I would. I would say average for us, this can be variable. I would say 60 to 80 on the low side, maybe 70 to 90, maybe 100 pounds on the higher side. But that's not saying that I know guys that fairly often will just manage these colonies very strictly, and they've produced a couple 100 pounds here in Missouri. But I think that depends upon a lot of different things. I don't know about you all where you were at, but this last year we had what we call a green dearth in the early spring. We had plenty of rain. Problem is we had too much rain, and the flight time was low during the time that we have some really heavy nectar producing plants like the black locust. That stuff will produce bucket loads of nectar. But if you get a cold snap, too much wind, or rainy days, forget it. It's only going to bloom for about 10 to 14 days. And after that, forget it. So.
Yeah.
You can down here. I mean, a nice strong colony, you pull a split out of them, it almost seems like they get stronger faster. It's almost like they just, so if you want to sell nukes, which is kind of my goal in the future, you can pull a split out in February, March, if you have queen availability. And they'll just won't skip a beat. They'll produce honey. I mean, it just doesn't even slow them down. It doesn't seem like, if anything, it may help in a way.
Yeah.
So it's just, but that is not the case everywhere. Everywhere can't. The bee season is not as long in other places, so you can't risk that maybe. But my main goal has always been honey production, because that's where I've made my, it's how the bees have paid for themselves. But I am looking at getting into some nuke sales. When I quit going out to pollination, I did it, I think, for 4 years, and it's just a lot of work trying to build them up when you really don't want to be building up bees in like November, December, getting them ready. And I'm feeding them, not just to keep them alive, but to try and build them in the middle of the winter. Even though it does get warm down here quite a bit, it's just kind of a pain. Yeah. So, but my thought process was, I can keep them home, keep them strong and healthy, and then I can split them and sell nukes, and I'll clear probably as much or more than I would send them off for pollination. Because, the pollination, you figure they do pay you X number of dollars but then they take out all the fees, the trucking and everything, all the stuff that goes along with it. And by the time you get your check, it's a nice check, but it's not it's not as good as it sounds in a lot of ways. And so, my thought process was I can just pull a nuke out of those colonies. I can sell them for more than what I would make with pollination. I still have my hives here and still make honey. And I haven't really done that yet as far as the nuke sales yet. I've really been trying to work on genetics and getting the bees to be better bees. And my honey demand has grown and grown each year. And so I need to make more and more honey. And so I'm afraid, I'm a little bit nervous about splitting off hives and selling them. I'm trying to get my pallets all full, all the slots full of hives. And then, the extra would be nukes. And so that's kind of where I'm looking in the future, is trying to do that. But
I've kind of put that backwards a little bit. So I've actually built the nukes to sell. If any additional that I have that I won't sell, I'll roll back into the operation, and I'll probably make another round of splits on some of the more robust colonies. But I'll also say that, Bruce, my main goal is not honey production. So, for me, if I'm being honest, I really don't like that part of it.
I love it. I enjoy it. It just absolutely amazes me when I start. Right now, they're building up. They're putting honey in. When I see that white wax and see that honey dripping, and I'm just like, man, that is the coolest thing ever. It just absolutely amazes me. Of course, when bees grow, it does too. But when they put that honey in there, I'm just like, man, this is just. They're going out. They're flying however far away, a mile or two or whatever. They're bringing these things back drop by drop. And they're processing this stuff. It's just, to me, that's just so miraculous. But then I just have so many honey customers that I just don't want to disappoint. At first, I used to when I started getting a few 5-gallon buckets of honey, like I get 8 or 10 or 12 buckets of honey, and I'd be thinking, man, how am I ever going to get rid of this stuff? Now it's like, oh my gosh, am I gonna, you got almost like over 9,000 pounds of honey. Am I going to have enough? And so it's grown into this crazy thing. And so, but the work it's a lot of work, and it's, all beekeeping is work, but I kind of enjoy it. I'm kind of weird that way. Most people just like to grow bees, and I don't think a lot of people enjoy it. When you're small as kind of a smaller hobbyist or whatever, it's a lot of fun. But when you get it where you're doing a lot of honey, it becomes less fun.
Yeah.
But then again, I utilize the YouTube channel, and I have a lot of friends that, like Bracken, who was in here. I'm not sure if he still is or not, but Bracken came down and helped me last year. Brian Lee in the chat helped me, and Grammy's helped me. Lisa's helped me. I've had people drive in from Birmingham and different places to help, and it's just kind of fun. The fellowship of it, I enjoy that too. If it's just me doing it myself, or me and my buddy Rusty, or me and a couple of local people, then it's not as much fun. But with all the help and all the fellowship, I enjoy it for the fellowship as much as anything. We'll get a crew of 6 or 8 people. We'll knock it out. And then the next day I'll have 8 or 10 people show up, or, whatever. And we've got a system that works well. And so, if it was just me and my wife doing it, or me and, 1 or 2 other people, it would not be near as much fun. So I look at all that.
Bruce, you're a good salesman. You're like, hey guys, come over and help me paint this fence. You guys will have so much fun painting this fence.
Well, Lisa will tell you. Lisa Grammy, she'll tell you.
Best brushes ever used. All other brushes, they're not brushes. They're weak.
But Lisa
that's really good, Brian. I mean, that's like amazing. If I close my eyes, I'd be like, holy cow, I am on with the man right now,
The way I do it, the way my
Bruce
line
Jenny,
is, you guys
producing honey in flip-flops.
If you ever want to get some help, let me tell you.
Hey, not with the mean bees he's had in the past, but I will say, Bruce, watching your videos, I can definitely tell the tides are turning on the temperaments in your yard.
Pull that video back up. He wasn't on when we showed that earlier.
Yeah, let me get that.
Here's the secret, though. It's just the 3 of us on here, right? I'll tell you how you get people to help you out with stuff, and hopefully I'm not burning bridges here. Lisa will tell you this. You just call them up and you say, hey, or you text them and you say, hey, so-and-so, we're harvesting honey this weekend, and I would just like to extend the invitation to you. If you would like to come, if you want to experience it, come on and help us out. If not, that's cool. That's totally cool. And you'd be surprised at how many people extend the invitation, and they're willing to come help you at least once.
Yeah.
People that come more than once, I think, are a little crazy, but they come at least once. Look at these bees. Play that, Brian. See how calm they are? That's, I think, a double deep and a medium honey box. Obviously, I put another box on there. This is Monday evening.
Oh wow, yeah, things
But
busted.
look at them; they're calm, and you could just. I was telling people, with Zach's bees, Zach Heinzman out there, you can kind of play the hula, and they just roll over and let you start patting their bellies. They're so calm.
That's awesome.
They sway on the frames and all that kind of stuff. So
I'll tell you what.
that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for right there. That's the kind of bees I want. Yeah. See, Grammy says Bruce can be very convincing. It's just fun, man. We have a good time with it, and Lisa's actually come, I think, 3 or 4 times now. So she must actually enjoy. She says I keep coming back.
If you weren't like probably a 18-hour drive, I'd help out.
I'm telling you, it's fun.
I would.
It's people like, there's just people like from church and from the community that just want to kind of, they may not even really want to have bees, but they just think it's kind of cool, the idea of it, and they'll come and help, at least maybe not with the pulling honey supers, but lots of times they'll come and help the extraction,
Yeah.
Because they're kind of eager or curious to see how it's all done. And so.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, Brian, Steve Amos has a question 2 down from that one there that I'd like to answer if I could. He says on there, question for Tom, how long should you wait for the dandelions and the dead nettle to bloom before you mow your yard? Well, Steve, this will be my answer to you. If you're a guy in the landscaping business and you love a monoculture of all green, beautiful, soft grass, you don't have to worry about that, bud. I have some good spray that knocks that stuff down, no time flat. And that's what my yard looks like. Well, I take that back. There is actually a handful of dandelions in there right now. I just haven't had time to break out the spray can on them. So
you're clear over here, and Brian out in Colorado is clear over here. If you ever did one of them house flips,
yep.
The first thing you do is walk out there and just spray. And the first thing Brian would do is he'd go out there and till and just throw seed.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. I'd come in with a skid steer and I'd clean that whole thing out and start from scratch, sod the whole thing, put the irrigation system in and chemical it up. You know what I mean? Because you know what the beauty of that is? When you only live in like a 1/3 acre, they can go to my neighbor's yards and there's plenty of food over there. But in all honesty, I don't keep that many hives here at my house. I keep just a few of them, and they're pretty nice colonies, and they don't get too fussy. So I leave them here. Melissa and I will tinker around with them a little bit and do fun stuff or experiments with the ones here.
Yeah.
But they're just But all joking aside, there's plenty of food there for the bees here in my neighbor's yards because not everybody's is a monoculture like mine. So. Steve, right. I know you were loading that question for me, and I could not answer it. But anyway, yeah.
I saw it. This is a good one here from Jed.
That's a good topic that Jed's bringing up there. That's a really good question.
Yep. Love to know how you guys handle frames with super old comb that the bees won't use. Throw it away or scrape off the old comb and let them, and put new wax on there. So I'm going to do the short answer here is years past, I was always horrible in managing my comb. Mm-hmm. I've been taking the opportunity right now with having frames in the building and not out in the yard that I'm going through literally all of my frames. And when I see super, super old comb, it's getting scraped. And then I've got bars of wax that I've processed. And the only wax that I save, it's typically my cappings when I extract. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to re-wax my frames.
Yeah.
So that's what I've always been horrible doing that, but not anymore. So
if you have, or if you build nukes, so Brian, if you got to a point where you turned out and built some nukes, guess what? You can still keep value in those combs. So you're not going to. So the question would be, he asked if the bees won't use. I wouldn't sell that to somebody. I couldn't do it in good conscience, but I wouldn't let it get that old either. So being 8 years into beekeeping, I've already cycled some of my comb out through nucleus colonies and such. And even the comb that I've gotten in for nukes that I've bought, it's usually older and dark, and the frames and the woods look almost like it's stained, I've cycled that back out too. So again, you're not, so if the comb has got to where you don't have that nice little hexagon inside there, and it looks like it's nothing but round, and you take your hive tool and push in it, and your hive tool bounces back, yeah, that comb's probably not any good. It's too hard. It's, the cells, the cocoons left behind are causing a problem with the size of the bees being produced. And not to mention, those are where all the potential herbicides, pesticides stick at. They stay in those fats. So I would probably then throw that away. But if you actually build a few nukes a year, you can cycle comb out that way and still be able to keep it in good shape. Where, again, it may not be brand new first year comb, but maybe second, third, maybe fourth year comb, I think it's still perfectly usable. Now, I would say if you feel like a colony died because of an issue, I'd burn that stuff. I don't think it's worth saving, in my opinion. But I'd also say, too, sometimes I think people don't put enough emphasis on producing comb, whereas Melissa and I worked pretty diligently and hard. Like I said earlier, I will completely sacrifice a honey crop on a colony just to produce comb. If they are really good at it and motivated, I'll just keep cycling combs in there just nonstop, just to the point that all they do is build comb pretty much for the entire season. And when they stop, then, we'll let them, top off their honey stores or feed them some syrup. But that's just been how I've done it, I'll say.
Bruce, what do you do?
One thing that I noticed, I went and spent a day with Seth Hill. For those who don't know Seth, he has worked with Bob Benny in the past. I'm not sure if he still is or not, but spent a day with him, and we pulled a bunch of splits out of his colonies over in South Georgia. I guess it's been almost 2 years ago now. And what he did, which I'm sure this is probably how Bob Benny does it as well, is as we pulled those splits, we pulled the splits out of the middle. That's mostly where the brood was. And he put the new comb, the new foundation on the outside. So the splits he was pulling in the nukes, and I guess you could use it either for nukes to grow in their full hives or to sell. And so that way they're always recycling the comb into the middle. Does that make sense? You pull the nuke out of the middle, sell it, then you got new fresh comb that's always working towards the middle from the outside in. And I haven't sold a lot of nukes. So what usually happens with mine is the older comb, either the wax moths get into it, as bees, as I have dead outs, I'll kind of look at it. If it's just old and hard, like you mentioned, Tom, I'll just kind of burn it or throw it away. If it gets to that point, you almost can't scrape it off. It gets so bad sometimes. And I think it's wise to try and cycle it out every, 3 or 4 years. Some people say less, some people say more. Some of my comb is a little bit older, but when the bees stop using it, I just burn it or get rid of it, throw it away. If they're not using it, then it's no value to you anyway. If you can scrape it off, you can always scrape it off. You can reapply wax, you can pressure wash it or just get it off of there and reapply wax. But sometimes it's easier just to buy a new frame and try and do all that. If it scrapes off easily, if you got wax moth damage, you can clean it up really good. Because another thing you can do, one of our local bee club members here does this, like Mike Berry did it one time, just kind of for fun as an experiment. If you just leave it sitting out, that old comb like that, the wax moths will come in, they'll just eat it. They'll just destroy it and clean those frames off pretty nice for you. And then you can you hate to create a wax moth, haven, but they will do it. That's what they do, is they clean that old wax off. And so they'll come in and clean all that old wax off, all the old larvae and the wax, and then you can just kind of clean it up really good, pressure wash it or whatever, and then re-wax it and reuse those frames. But those are some different techniques. But mostly, I don't have a particular strategy or plan. I should probably get it out of there more, but some of my wax is pretty old. But the bees, if they completely quit using it, then I cycle it out. Like you said, the round frames that have round cells in them, they're not going to use that anymore. It's just worthless. But for the most part, if I ever do nukes, I'm going to kind of try to work on that. Try to, the older comb will go in the nukes, and then I'll try to work it in and kind of try to, always have newer comb being recycled in. That's kind of my goal. One thing
you can also cycle some of that comb to the outside frames for honey frames, and then when they eat it, pull them out at that point. If you have some brood on there and you don't want to sacrifice it, obviously it would make sense not to. Sure. Cycle it toward the outside, and when it gets to where they start to empty it off or eat it out, then pull them out and cycle some new.
I have a few dead outs every year, and over the years, I think I've cycled out a lot of comb just that way. I usually just burn it. Man, that's quite a fire when you burn old wax, old frames. That is a hot and very nice fire when you do that.
Yeah,
But the other thing is, we mentioned earlier, it's kind of going back on the previous topic about checkerboarding. And this is one thing I've done over the years. When I first started keeping bees, my mentor actually did this, and down here it's warm enough pretty early in the year usually that you can do this. When I would get a nuke, sell a nuke, or when I got my first couple of nukes from him, we just checkerboarded them all the way, alternate all the way through that brood box. And in a good flow, like right now, if I was to do that, within a week, they'd have that whole thing drawn out and she'd be laying in it. But if you do that in February, you're going to maybe get in trouble because they need to keep that brood warm. But then that creates a problem if you're trying to cycle out comb the way that Seth does it, because then you got all the frames mixed together. So, but when I helped him make those splits, all the frames that were drawn out that have brood in whatever went to the middle. The nukes came out of the middle. The other frames got pushed in that have brood on the existing hive, and then the new frame foundation went on the outside. It's just a really good system if you're trying to rotate through comb, if you're trying to make splits, if you're trying to do that, sell nukes or whatever. That's a really good system to keep your comb fairly young and fresh. And I have never, that was a strategy that I saw him use that I thought was really wise. And it really works well. You'll never have like 15-year-old comb doing that. I mean, it's gonna cycle through within a couple of 3 years, depending on how many nukes you sell. You'll have it all cycled out, and your customers won't get the really old comb either. It'll all be still usable when they get it. So that's a good idea as well.
One other thing that he did too, I thought was a pretty brilliant idea. I thought he talked about it pretty early on. Is if you want to cycle out boxes, bottom boards, equipment like that, where again it's not junk, but it's something that you want to move out, you could cycle out an entire colony. I think you talked about that a little bit, Bruce. If you have some, like for instance, when Melissa and I first started beekeeping, we didn't wax tip anything. We painted it and did nice, fun little shapes and all kinds of cool little things on there. And none of those were wax tip. But I think by my second or third year, I built a wax tipping tank and started wax tipping everything. And what I'll probably start doing here within the next year or two is I believe I'm going to maybe sell off whole colonies of my equipment that is not wax dipped. Just to get rid of that. Now it's still in good shape at this point. I don't know how long it'll last, but again, I've only been beekeeping for 8 years. But
Seth, it was interesting because when we were doing that, he had a customer that day that came over, and he kind of was there. He helped a little bit, but he was mostly kind of watching, observing. And I think Seth had like 60 colonies, and we pulled out like 103 splits. I mean, we busted them down hard. It was in early May, late April, early May 2 years ago. That was such a cool day though, man. I worked so hard. I barely made it home. It's about a 2.5, 3 hour drive home, something like that. It's a ways. It's like 130, 140 miles. But I was so tired, but that was one of the most fulfilling days. But that guy that came actually was a customer for complete hives, for a full 10 frame hive. And at the time, I don't know what Seth's doing now. I'm not sure what he's doing with his bees, if he's even still doing bees. I think he probably is, but he was selling queens. I said, "Are you going to sell nukes?" And he's like, "No, I'm not going to sell nukes, but I am going to sell some full hives." He was trying to grow his operation that year, trying to expand and grow. And but that was his goal, was to do that, exactly what you said. So I've never really thought much about selling entire big colonies. I've always just thought, hey, if I sell bees, I'll sell nukes. But that's another idea that works out well. Did for him. I'm
not sure about certain areas, but around here, a nice double deep colony, a nice colony, not something that's with a horrible queen or what have you. You can sell it for $400.
Yeah, a double deep, sure. What would you sell a single deep for?
Well, that's a good question.
That's what he was selling that day, was single deeps, 10 frame single deeps.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, I don't run 10. I don't. So here,
just say 8 frame. So it's full 8 frame colony.
A five frame nucleus colony here goes for 200. Pretty average. If it's overwintered, 225, 235. Some people sell the nukes a little bit more than that. A couple people slightly less, but pretty average is about $200 for us in our area. So, and I only run 8 frame stuff, but if you had a full or single 10 frame hive, bees on every space going all the way across there, I mean, obviously it's not going to be all brood, which brood combs are a lot more valuable than honey frames are, when it comes to that. But I would say, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, DC says 250 to 300. That's probably fair for a 10 frame, 10 frame deep.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, if you think about it, though, if you've got a 10 frame, if you're selling 5 frame nukes for 200, I mean, I probably would not sell that thing any less than 300.
Mm-hmm.
Because you figure you could split it
Yeah.
and let the other one raise out a queen, and you've got 2 5 frame nukes there, and that'd be $400.
I guess it's just something you have to kind of figure what your market will, what people are interested in paying, and kind of work out what works best. And every market is a little bit different.
Yeah. There was a guy that I was, it's our club president, actually. I guess it was probably late June, said to me, he goes, "Hey, you interested in buying any colonies?" I'm like, what's the deal? Tell me about it. And he's like, "Well, I need to pull one of my yards back. It's at my daughter's house. They want to get rid of it." He goes, "I don't want to start up a new yard. I'm thinking about selling them off." And it was all 10 frame equipment. It was in mediocre shape. And so I asked him, I said, "Does the honey come with it?" He says, "No." Because when we were talking about price and stuff, he goes, "Well, a nuke goes for 200. I'm like, "It goes for 200 in the early spring. You're talking about late June, which means nothing but, varroa mite management at that point in time." I said, "You're not going to get anything off of it at this point in time of the year. The honey crops, for our season is gone." I said, "So right now it's management for me." And so anyway, long story short, we end up landing on like 2.25. And what I did is, all I did was completely piecemeal those down. I had no intention of keeping them. I went in the colonies. And I said, well, first, before anything, we make a deal. I said, I want to come in and I want to mite check each one of those colonies. He goes, "I haven't treated them. The honey supers are still on. I'm going to pull them this week. Come out." I said, we'll mite check them. I want to see where the colonies are at, because if they were washing, 15, 20, I wouldn't have been interested, because they could have been a walking dead colony. I said, if they're washing low numbers, I'm like, potentially this is what I'll pay you. Anyway, we washed them and they were really low. They were at, I think the highest one was like maybe 2%. So they were actually in really good shape. And he said he hadn't treated them at all that year. So anyway, I went to a lady that I know around here that sells beekeeping supplies. And I said, "Hey, they were all brand new queens from that year." I said, I have 5 queens that are, I said that here's what the washes were on each one of those queens. I said, "You interested in buying them?" She said, "Yep." So I think I sold each one of those queens for $40 each. I sold off the equipment that he had them in. I don't remember what I got for that. And then I took all those brood frames and I split them all the way down. And I don't remember how many nukes I built out of each one of those. And that's part of what I was using to overwinter in those colonies. So I got a fair amount of my money back from the queens and the equipment. And then the additional would have came out of the nukes that I had that I overwintered.
I got a question for you, Tom. This is a question I think we've addressed with Greg on here before, and Greg has a pretty strong opinion about it. We probably all have a pretty strong opinion about it, but you mentioned overwintered nukes versus new nukes created in the spring. It sounded like to me that you mentioned overwintered nukes you would sell for more than just a newly created nuke.
Sure.
Kind of explain your philosophy for why, and just what your thought pattern is on that.
Yeah. So an overwintered nuke, would be, now I'll say for us, our season starts to wind down as far as honey production into June. By the time we hit July 4th, unless we're having prolonged rain here and clover still blooming and things of that nature, for the most part, our honey production is pretty much gone. And having a fall flow, boy, that's just hit and miss. You could have some, might get a little bit. Usually you'll have to supplement a little bit of feed, depending on how much you leave on, things of that nature. Basically, an overwintered nuke, I would build those usually probably sometime in June before the honey production's done. And those queens we'll either graft from, or Melissa and I will rear ourselves out of our own colonies, whether we pull the frame or pull the queen, let them build some cells, what have you. But typically it'll be from a graft. And then I'll take those and I'll get those mated in our own yards. We have a couple yards that are 3 yards particular that only set up. They're all about 1.5 miles, 1.2 to 1.5 miles from each one of them in somewhat of a triangle. So we've actually created probably some pretty good DCAs around there. I've never tried to locate any of them, have a lot of our genetics within those colonies. But So if I get those queens where they can start to rear some nice brood, but they haven't gone through a full spring season of just intense laying, so ideally they're prime. You know what I mean? So taking those into winter, sometimes I'll build them up into a 5/5 or even a 5/5 and then break them back down. But I'll overwinter those like that, and then coming out of spring, you're basically when somebody gets an overwintered nuke for an additional 25 or $35, they're getting a nucleus colony that's at least 2-3 weeks, maybe as much as a month ahead of time, that they're all ready to go. So now having that a month ahead of time, it is very likely that nucleus colony coming out of winter will then produce a honey crop that year without much issue in our area. So they get it sooner. You kind of have more of a proven layer than just 3 weeks or 4 weeks time period, which I still personally think 3 to 4 weeks, you can get a good assessment on a queen. But there's this idea about it that I guess especially getting genetics from your own area, some people really rely heavy on that. Personally, I don't know that I have a real strong opinion either way on that, to be honest with you. Maybe in 15 or 20 years I might, but I think the big advantage is that you have a prime queen that was close to the solstice, but yet they get it 3 weeks or 4 weeks early. So there's
so you build them up and they go through winter, say maybe in a double deep 5/5.
Mm-hmm.
How you break them? How do you break them down? You just pull because my bees, man, they're just exploding. They start exploding in January. So
yeah.
Do you pull the second deep nuke off and put a queen in there and make a split out of it and just sell the bottom one? Or how do you actually condense them back down into a nuke?
I'm going to pull the heart of this thing out of it. So I get whatever frames are left over, with their honey frames, if they're empty combs, because I still, if I'm selling a nuke, I still want to see that thing having a solid 3 frames of brood, probably a honey frame and pollen and honey on it. So I'm going to give them a nuke that needs to go into a box right out of the gate. There are some that I had pulled back that just coming out of winter, they were a week, and I'm like, I just can't sell these. I'll grow them, and throw them into my own operation as long as the queens are doing well. But I think for us, I mean, we're much further behind you, Bruce, when it comes to that. We don't really start seeing our first pollens here until mid-February, 3rd week of February, and that's a lot of willow, elm, and maple. So it's very unlikely that there's much brood within those colonies at that point in time.
Yeah.
Until after those first pollens.
They just down here, man. I'm thinking about, we like say I want to make right now is prime queen making season here is April. Do you guys hear an echo, or is this just in my?
Yeah, I hear an echo too.
Okay. It might be feeding back
That's
to my
weird.
mic. Is that better? That's probably better.
Yeah.
So right now is prime queen season here, probably April, May, and maybe early June. And then we go into those dearths, and it's really difficult. You can raise queens here, but it becomes much more difficult, I think, when there's not a really good nectar source coming in. And so I'm thinking, we pull a queen out now, we make a split, we put them in a nuke. Well, they're going to be in a deep pretty quickly. You know what I mean? So how do you kind of hold them back? I guess you could stack nuke boxes up, which I've done that in the past. But then they may back up a little bit in the wintertime, but boy, coming into like January, they explode. And so I guess the most important part of the package, obviously, is probably the queen. So you could even pull a nuke out of an overwintered double 5 stack nuke or whatever you want to call it, and pull the 3 frames of brood out of there, maybe a frame of food and an empty foundation, or maybe 2 frames of food, whatever you do. And that's still an overwintered nuke, even though many of the bees and the resources will be left behind. And then you can drop a new queen or queen cell in there, or whatever you want to do, combine it with another colony, whatever you want to do to strengthen your production colonies with the bees that are left behind. So I guess that's my question. I understand the principle if you've got a queen that is now 8 or 9 months old, that is just hitting her prime, and she'll be good for, really good and solid for about, that first year for sure, maybe even in a second year, as opposed to dropping a brand new queen in there that is unproven, even though you may have proved her and she might have a good brood pattern on a few frames, but you're going to sell that queen, but she is brand new. So you really don't know. But if you got a proven queen that's 8 or 9 months old, you can look at that brood pattern. You can check for mites. You can just make sure she's a good quality product. And so I got that. It's kind of funny. Greg was kind of chuckling. Someone mentioned that to him one time that they had an overwintered nuke with a new queen in it. He's like, well, that's okay.
Well,
I guess the bees were overwintered, but the new queen, it's just kind of like that's not really an overwintered nuke, is it? I mean, not. I mean, maybe the bees went through the winter, but the queen is really the key in all this. We got to remember the queen is the key, and so.
I'm sure by the time they come that out, there wasn't any winter bees left in there, because when they start getting pollens back in, those winter bees get back on the aging cycle very quickly, and they age out very fast. So it's likely after your first pollens come in, it's likely within probably 3 or 4 weeks after that, and they're rearing brood. Most of those winter bees have already started to die off at that point. So you really didn't end up with the overwintered nuke whatsoever,
Unless, but if you had a queen in there, I'm not sure what you do with the old queen. I guess theoretically, just take, for example, our example we're talking about here. We've got an overwinter queen that is an overwinter queen. Mm-hmm. You got a double or even a triple stack nuke. Say you have 6 frames of brood in that double stack nuke. I mean, they're really starting to take off. You pull the bottom box off that's got the queen in it. You still have plenty of bees and plenty of resources for another nuke. And so then you drop a queen in there. That might be kind of the principle. You got the young bees, the brood and everything. It would be how I would look at it, but you just put a new fresh queen in there. So there's all kinds of ways to do it. People sell all kinds of stuff. I know one other thing that you got to be careful of. We had a local guy here. We've had a local guy here one time that bought some bees from a local beekeeper, and they were just full of mites, just really not a good product. And so that's one reason I am so nervous, or not really nervous isn't the word, but I'm so hesitant to just get my products out. You just got to make sure you're selling a good product. And
absolutely.
And, another thing to consider with nukes, a local guy here actually traveled several hundred miles with nukes up north and sold them at a place, a store up north, in a location. And when he did that, he kind of scaled them back on purpose. I think a couple of frames of brood, because they will explode over time. And to travel, he didn't want them to get overheated. This was in the springtime, I think. And I think some of the customers were kind of like, man, these nukes, they're not real strong. But then he said, just wait. And they did explode and do really well. So you just got to look in the resources, got to look in the colony and make sure the brood. One thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is that every good solid frame of brood is at least 2 frames of bees.
Yep.
So if you get a nuke that's got 2 packed out frames of brood that are just really beautiful brood pattern, really a lot of brood on there, within a couple of weeks, you're going to have a nuke full of bees, period. And if that queen is laying, it's just going to explode fast, even if you don't open up and see bees covering all the frames.
Mm-hmm.
So many different things to consider. And I like the way you do it. That's kind of how I do it too, where basically I've always in the past, I've sold nukes, but I've actually put them in the hives myself, or they bring their colonies to me. I put the bees in there myself, or I go to their place and put the bees in there myself. I've never sold a gesture nuke, although if I sell nukes in the future, I probably will. Mm-hmm. But that way I know that they're in there. I know they're in there properly. And I usually like them to be packed out so they'll explode really fast.
Yeah.
But if you're getting them, it's kind of like you mentioned earlier. I think if you're selling one to a brand new person, it can be too strong. They can get in over their head, and they can get in trouble if it's too strong.
The other thing to think about too is if you're traveling bees, if you have a 5-frame nucleus colony, and so like for instance, a handful of years ago, I was bringing some up from Georgia, and the guy says to me, he goes, "These things are busting at the seams," and I'm like, "Well, would you do me a favor?" I said, "Would you take a shake of bees out of them and then give me an extra partial brood frame?" And he's like, "Yeah," because at the end of the day, when you have 5 frames of bees that are absolutely crawling on top of each other where you can't see the comb, when you start to move that colony around, you put it in your car, jostle it, they start fanning their wing muscles and they start creating heat. They will cook themselves inside that box if they don't stay well ventilated. So it's very important when people are moving a nucleus colony or full hives from point A to point B, you always have to keep ventilation on them. You always have to keep the vehicle moving. You always have to have air blowing across them. The worst case scenario, if you had something like what I've heard of guys where trucks have broke down, they'll actually bring the firefighters out there and they'll spray the bees down with water so they can regulate their, temperature a little bit better. So that's another thing to think about too, when people are moving colonies, when you have them full 5 frames busting out of bees, they'll cook themselves very easily if you're not cautious. So, something else to consider.
Tom, I got to show you. Eli brought me. This is the new Castle Hives mascot right here.
I'm not sure what that is, but it's really interesting.
It's a little alligator. He keeps bringing it and dropping it at my feet.
That means you're his master. It sounds like a pig. It looks like an alligator. What do you call that?
A paligator.
Alligator.
Or a pigigator.
That's good. I like
Yeah.
it.
Pigigator.
Yeah. He
That's
keeps
good.
coming
Man,
up and
good
he's
stuff.
dropping it and he's nudging my feet like, come on, let's play.
He's like, enough of the chat already. Let's go
Yeah.
do a little bit of fetch here, right?
Yeah.
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 Man, good stuff. It's just the season for all these type
I'm
of
telling you,
conversations.
I know. I'm excited to get started. I can't wait. I literally have got, let me see, 10 days. Piginator. There we go. DC got it. I literally have 10 days and I'm going to pick up my packages. I'll find out probably tomorrow. Well, no, probably Friday. I'll probably wait till Friday because tomorrow I think the high is going to be 60, but I could do it. But Friday we're going to have the 70s. So Friday I'm going to crack my boxes and check out exactly the amount of brood that I have in there, so I'll know where I'm sitting.
Mm-hmm.
So things are going to get real quick. So,
Brian, you have 3 colonies coming out of winter. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Are all 3 of them fairly robust for this time of year in your area?
They look good.
Okay.
They look good. Like, and I'm talking like probably 3-4 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled frames just looking in the mediums just to see what I would find. I wasn't sure what I would see. And I mean, they had 4 frames of brood in the medium 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So there was one that had close to 5 of the frames was brood.
Okay.
So they're going to be good. I mean, population wise, I think, I mean, all of that brood that's already hatched and they're working through the process of their duties. But if they had that much, then, I mean, from that point to now, she's continued to ramp up. So
are you going to break any of those colonies down, or you want to utilize those for honey production? Or are you not concerned about honey production?
So I'm going to break them down. I'm going to sacrifice some honey.
Okay.
I've had some people that are like, oh, don't do that and whatever, but I need to grow. So if I can, and I canceled some of the markets that I'm doing. I told the guy, I sent him an email, and they normally they say no refunds, no cancellations, and I wrote the guy an email, and he's pretty cool. I've done it 2 years now, so he knows me. And I explained the situation of what's going on, and I gave him some links. That way, he knew that, well, it was not just like an issue with me, that it's like an issue all over the place. And he was real cool about it. He said, whatever you want to do, let me know. If you want to cancel stuff, we'll do a refund. So I canceled a couple of my markets. But I'm going to sacrifice a little bit for growth, because I'm looking at it in that if I sacrifice a little bit this year, if I do grow to the point where I want to, then next year I'll set myself up in a better spot. So that's all I'm looking at.
Well, I only asked that because you probably could dial the colony back. Okay. You can dial it back just a little bit where you can still produce a honey crop.
Yeah.
Off of it, but yet make a split off of it. Because again, that's kind of how I set all mine up. I'll still produce honey off of it, but keep them in the box and keep them from swarming.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's some queens that you'll have in there that are just absolutely just gangbusters that probably need to be split back again just a little bit before we get there. So my goal here is to potentially, since I'm running everything over I'm double 8 box management. I love the double brood box management. Do I sacrifice a little honey? Yep, probably do. I'm okay with it. Again, I said it's not my favorite thing to do anyway. And then I put that double screen board and then build my nuke over it inside of another 8 frame box. So any additional that they grow within those few weeks, I can keep those frames in there, whether it's brood, honey, whatever it might be, resources, pollen, keep those in there and start another split. Now, I'm probably not going to do an additional 100 like I have over there currently, but I may consolidate some of those down a little bit and either hopefully by then Melissa will have grafted some queens and we can drop some virgins in there and run them, like that direction. So I can get my increase, still have some honey production to take care of my customers and such. But I'm sure that you can still do the same thing there too with the 3. That way you can keep some honey production for yourself. Yeah. Make a split off of it. But, I heard you saying before that you have 5 or 6 packages coming.
6.
6. So,
also nukes that I'm going to get.
You're on all drawn comb. So you're not at the same starting point that everybody else would be. So you're already ahead of the game. I mean, pretty far ahead of the game.
Right.
As soon as that queen gets accepted and she starts pumping out babies there, that colony will start to grow quickly because you don't have to draw any comb. So,
I'm looking to try and split each of those packages also. Now I could get extra queens and just split them right out of the get-go, but I don't want to do that. I want to just install them as 3-pound packages, let them build, and then once they get to the point that box is filled out, those 10 frames, they'll get split.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. I've heard people talk about this before. I've only used a couple packages before and I didn't care much for them. But that was my start, and I didn't have much drawn comb. So you're at a different point there. So I can understand where you're using packages. I understand people sell 4-pound packages too. So is it and maybe you're already set into something and you can't change it, but is it possible to get some 4-pound packages and then get 2 queens with them, where now you're not 1 3-pound and then a queen? Maybe you can do some 4-pound packages and split them half and half, 2 queens in there. So you basically 2 and 2. I mean, it'd be a bit of a guessing game when you're shaking. But
I've never seen up here in Ohio, I've never seen anyone sell 4-pound packages, and I don't want to buy anything online and have them shipped because I trust UPS or FedEx or USPS. I trust them to take care of the bees as much as what I would trust a thief.
Yeah.
It's like the one time when I had queens, and it even said on the box, like, hold at the post office, call customer, all that stuff. I got an email that said your package is out for delivery. And I was like, oh my God. And I called the office and I said, these don't know. I said, take them off the truck.
Right.
And they caught them before the carrier left. And then I told him, I said, like, literally it says right on the box, call customer.
The details that somebody missed.
Yeah. So I was just like, why would you even do that?
We had 2 queen orders come up. One was for me, one was for the EMBA, and I received both of them. One was last week on Tuesday, Wednesday, what have you, I guess it was. And I specifically called up. It was shipping UPS, not USPS, which I trust even less. But UPS has typically been pretty good for us. And I asked my driver, I said, hey, what hub are they coming out of? I said, I have a queen delivery coming up. And I'm like, retail, we're talking about $7,500 worth of insects. And I said, not that I don't like you and trust you, but I'd rather, as soon as they land in their overnight air, I'd rather come up to the location early in the morning and pick them up. Yeah. He's like, absolutely. He goes, I'm happy for you to do it. So he got me the number. I called up there, told him what it was coming in. I said, just hold them there. I said, what time does your overnight air come in? She said, between 7 and 7:15. I said, I will call at 7:30 to make sure that they are there and they've arrived. I will, if they're there, I'm going to drive up there and pick them up. Don't put them on a truck. I will bring them back here, water them, feed them, and get them in a nice climate control area just to kind of settle in for a minute before we throw them in the hives. And that's basically what we did for each one of them. And it was funny because when I went up there, it kind of opened up the door for a conversation with some of the drivers that were up there early in the morning loading up. And the guy's like, is that really bees in there? I'm like, it sure is. I'm like, it's all queens. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I said, your mind would be blown if you have any idea how much money is sitting right here in this box.
Yeah.
And, you know, I said, your head would probably pop off and spin around a couple of times. And so anyway, he's like, yeah, it's just crazy. And I'm like, well, it is what it is. And I said, these queens are going to make money for people this year. And that's, that's the name of the game.
One thing that I've started doing lately, we have a UPS store You guys have UPS stores up there, just where they can.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've actually had them delivered to the local UPS store because that way it's indoors. It never sits on my front porch.
Yeah.
And well, I'm not even sure if I can get a hold of our UPS location now. It's really hard to get in over there, and they're not good to call. So I just, like, when Zach sent me the queens, first of all, he does a tremendous job packing them. He puts the bees in there with a lot of attendance, and he has 2 syringe looking things. One of them has water in it. The other one has with a sponge in the end. The other one has candy in it. And
nice.
they really work really well. If you watch my queen videos from earlier in the year, you'll see how he packs them. But we ship them to the UPS store, and I've had really good success with that because it's air conditioned. Now, the other issue is if they're on the truck for very long, but typically I think they deliver them like in the morning over there. They get them over there pretty quick. I'm not sure how that all works, but the other thing that's kind of funny is I'll watch the tracking when they get sent, and he puts on the, let's say call customer, and sometimes it'll be like 2:00 in the afternoon. I'm like, hey, did you guys get a package of bees? Oh yeah, that's you. And they usually call, but one time earlier this year they didn't call, but I knew they were coming, so I knew they were indoors, so it wasn't that big a deal. And his bees, the way he packs them, I mean, they could stay that way for, they they barely even break into they have so much candy and so much water in there.
Mm-hmm.
They're just perfectly happy. Like, they're just happy as they can be in there. And so, he actually goes above and beyond the way he packs his queens. I'm real impressed with him. So,
food for thought. I'm pretty picky about that. I would be reluctant, and this has nothing to do with queen breeders, their shipping processes, and the care that they take of them, because I'm sure there's a lot of guys that take the utmost care to ensure the best quality product arrives in your doorstep. But you're asking some guys that know nothing about insects to get them to your doorstep, and things can fall through the cracks. I've never ordered queens midsummer. I've never ordered anything toward the weekend, because here's the situation. What happens if something goes awry and that those queens, you shipped them on a Friday, something happens, they're not delivered on a Saturday or didn't make it to the thing. Now they're sitting an extra day in unclimate controlled area, potentially damaging some sperm and her spermatheca. Maybe her female reproductive organs get damaged, too much stress. They could die easier. So those are things that I've done before in the past, where when we were talking about shipping them, I'm like, no, let's not ship them on a Friday. Let's wait until Monday to ship them because of this. So
that's what Zach actually does. Zach actually does that. I think he tries to ship his early in the week, so you don't end up the risk of the weekend having to sit somewhere for a couple of days. I think he does that. So. Anyway, a lot of guys, I'm not just, Zach's been great to me, but a lot of, all these queen breeders really, they care about their bees. They want them to arrive and they want them to be a good product. So but the way he does it, I've been impressed. I've ordered queens from several places.
Yeah.
And one thing that's interesting, I think you made a good point, Tom. I think sometimes the stress of the transportation can have an effect, because I believe the queens are good quality, but typically if you say I ordered 10 queens, from a lot of places I've ordered in the past, like 2 or 3 will be rock stars. 3 or 4 of them will be really just average good queens. They'll be solid queens. And then 2 or 3 of them are just usually kind of duds. They just don't work out very well. And so, and a lot of times they get released and they just don't do well. Like they just don't have they don't lay very well or do a really good job. And a lot of that could be the stress from transportation.
Absolutely.
But I have noticed with his queens, the percentage of acceptance and quality is a little higher than that. It's just really good, actually. And so I think a lot of it has to do with the way he ships them. And they come from all the way from Hawaii. It just blows my mind how they come all the way from Hawaii. And I can put them in my hives in Alabama and they do just fine.
That's crazy.
It absolutely just floors me.
It's a good idea. So we had, in mine, I didn't care as much because I was introducing them myself. But on the ones we ordered for the club, I'm like, can you make sure? And he put them in both attendants, 5 to 6 attendants in each one of the cages, and then shook a frame of bees on top of them inside the box. So now, and then he puts candy inside there, and then also a sponge for water. So now those bees that are in there kind of nursing those cages can now. So it's just like you said, Bruce, you're lessening that stress of them not being in a hive, not having all their daughters around them. the temperature fluctuations are going to be greater than what they would be inside of a colony. So all these little bitty nuggets or tidbits of information that just make the difference. Like, you said his name was Zach, right? The queen breeder in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm sure he does the best quality job on it, but the one thing that is missing in it, he can do the absolute best job. But if transporting from point A to point B, something happens, that's not his fault. He has zero control of it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You pay a UPS company $100 or over $100 to ship. At least I did, to ship from North Florida up to here to get to me overnight. But to me, that's the best $100 I'll spend, because if you have $7,000 worth of queens in there and they sit an extra day on a hot truck or anything weird happens and it damages 30% of them, you've now lost, So all those little things are really important. And I think some of those queen breeders really have it figured out when it comes to that,
Yep. Zach says it helps if UPS doesn't tape up the screens as well. Like he had one, I guess he sent me a picture. He was so irritated. He sends them in the queen boxes that have the screens, for ventilation. And he sent me a picture of one of the UPS places had put tape around that, like just basically just taped it closed. So, what do you do when they suffocate your bees? It says, do not, I think on the boxes, it just says, do not cover ventilation, or make sure you, and he actually puts sticks on either side of them. So if a box is next to it, it can't seal it off. Like
nice.
Space. But still even with that, they have taped over the screen. And so, what do you do? It says,
sounds
do not
like
cover.
A man who has learned from experience.
Yeah. So, like you said, there are a lot of, when you're sending bees thousands of miles, or even hundreds of miles, if they're going from Alabama to Tennessee, or if they're going from Hawaii to Florida, or if they're going from Missouri to Washington, wherever they're going, when you turn them over to somebody else, there's always a risk. And some people think it's really cool, and some people are just like, please get these bees out of here as fast as you can, because they kind of are nervous about them. But anyway, what a great conversation tonight. It's been awesome.
Absolutely.
I know. Tom, thank you, buddy. Again.
Absolutely. Happy to come on with you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Bruce, he met, so last night at the meeting where I was at, Greg told me, he said, is there any way that you can do the stream tomorrow? I said, yeah, sure. He said, he just is so swamped busy right now. I said, yep. I said, I'll get it made up in the morning. And I was so darn exhausted. I'm up at 6 whatever in the morning, like 6:45 in the morning, getting ready for work and that, and all day. And then I drove clear down. I was home late last night, and Bruce messaged, and he was like, he asked about someone to join in, and I said, I hadn't even thought about it. So, but no, I appreciate it. It's always a good time when you jump on.
I told Greg to keep me in the loop when he has an event up there at Nature's Image Farm. I've never been up to his farm there in Ohio.
No.
So when he has an event up there at some point in time, I asked JW, I said, hey, because JW has been up to his farm a couple times.
Oh,
I said,
yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
I said, would you go for a road trip with me? And I said, I think Melissa wants to go too. Go for a road trip with me. I said, if Greg has an event over a weekend, we'll go up there and see if we can't get play in his hives a little bit, or get stung up, or, get into some trouble in some way, shape, or form. So if you happen to, I'm sure I'll talk to Greg at some point, but if you happen to talk to Greg, or you know of something that's going to happen up there, maybe you can come over too. And who knows, maybe we can even drag Bruce from all the way to the down south.
Yeah.
And get him to go up into God's country up there in Ohio.
I know that there was talk about having something later in the year. I don't know when. It's pretty much once things are wrapped up. I'll be down at his place next Saturday. I'm going to go down and help him out all day. So his package pickup they're just crazy busy. So I'm going to go down and we're not building walls, and I'm sure that I'll get a free donut. So, but
well, bless his heart. He's really treating you right then, huh?
Exactly. I tell you what, the last time I was down there, I got a donut and I got a McChicken from McDonald's.
Hey, you be sure to tell your buddy Greg I'll come up and help him, but a donut and a chicken sandwich is not going to get it done.
What about a fried bologna sandwich?
Oh no, definitely not. JW would eat that crud all day long, but that's not going to work well for me. He likes eating that nasty stuff, man. Shoot,
Oh my
not
gosh.
interested in that.
That's why you look so healthy, Tom. I mean, you don't have the tire that I've got, the big gut
Yeah.
and stuff.
Tire. I've got.
Donut.
Yeah.
That's
I got
because
more than that.
That's because Melissa keeps me working 12 to 14 hours a day. When
That's
Brian had
terrible.
texted me earlier, I said, "Hey, I'm happy to come on." I'm like, just to let you know, I might be a little bit late coming in. And literally, as soon as I walked in the door, Melissa was on the laptop. And I'm like, "I need the laptop." She's like, "Okay, I'm just finished up with whatever billing or whatever she was working on." And so I didn't even get a shower yet or eat anything. I just plopped down and said, "Hey, what's going on, fellas?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Thanks for coming on,
Well,
man.
good stuff. Yeah.
appreciate you guys.
Bruce, you gotta do the deed, buddy, because I can't. You got it right last time.
Well, we just all need to remember to be the lighthouse. So are we ready to close it out?
There you go.
I think so.
We thank everyone for watching tonight, and tentatively this will be on Greg's channel next week, but we've said that the last couple of weeks, and it hasn't been on his channel, so it'll be on somebody's channel next week, as far as we know. But stay tuned, and we'll be posting on the Facebook Streamteam Beekeeping chat page, either that day or a little bit sooner, which channel it's going to be on. But we're hoping it'll be on Greg's channel. Maybe you can join us next week. So thanks for coming on again, Tom. And
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks, Brian.
there you go. No, I think he just eats healthy, JW. He just eats healthy. But I mean, I think I eat healthy. I just eat too much. Most of the time I eat healthy, but I just eat too much. But
Yeah.
appreciate everyone for coming on tonight. We had a great crowd on tonight. We had a great conversation. These are important topics this time of the year. Splits, nukes, just kind of a lot of really good stuff, a lot of beekeeping principles. And I think we learned tonight, as we always do, that there are many ways to do things, many effective ways to do things. And I think what you need to do if you're a beekeeper, new or old, is you need to just try new things and figure out what works best for you.
Agreed.
Also encourage everyone to be supportive of each other, not critical. We don't need to be trolls to each other. There's too much of that going on in the world. Let's just try to be supportive and help each other out. That's one reason we have this beekeeping community, the stream team community, and all the different kind of things that have happened, all the different groups, the chats that are out there. It's just to help build this community. That's why they're all successful, is because people love to talk about bees and love the community and fellowship. So let's just be supportive of each other, help each other out, and try to support each other the best way possible and be positive. We appreciate everyone being on here tonight. And, the stream team, we kind of adapted. I've used it on my channel some. I know, Brian, you probably have too. But we've kind of adopted the quote from Nature's Image Farm, #be the lighthouse. So we just encourage everyone to remember to be the lighthouse and be the change that you want to see in this world. See y'all later.
See y'all.